This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, master of gun kata and body massages. Today we are taking a look at Black-Eyed Child by the Lawlet 10. This video is sponsored by the Lawlet 10 and wants me to read this original version, this redux of Black-Eyed People, a story that we tackled previously. So let's see what he has written for us. We met in December, 3 days before Christmas Eve, which made our anniversary a pretty easy date to remember. It was at a holiday party my brother, Greg, was having at his apartment. Greg had gotten into SIU on a football scholarship, and I was pretty proud of my little brother for getting into the same school as me. My little brother had always been the more popular of the two of us. He was the brains, and I was the brawn, but I was okay with that. However, being the smart one came with being labeled as socially awkward, and the worst part was that I was. High school had been more uncomfortable than anything, but college was pretty good. I had a few friends, went to strategic games, science club, and things like that, and Greg had taken the entire semester to spend time with his favorite and only brother. So immediately this is more successful than Black-Eyed People, the original thing that we read, in many ways, in that it has 1,000 times more personality. Some of the language is confusing because us, the narrator, we're supposed to be the brawn, but we're being labeled socially awkward. This is a little confusing. I think we might have gotten confused in the way we wrote this. And went to strategic games. I think they mean strategy games or tabletop games, unless they mean went to the right football games to be, seen as, interested in that kind of stuff, to be popular. That's a little confusing, but let's press on. The party started out small, but quickly got bigger and bigger as Greg's friends texted and called their friends, which turned our kiddie pool of a party into a tidal wave. And that's when I first met Julia. Or maybe she's Spanish, maybe it's Julia. No, I'm just joking. My little brother introduced me to her, probably hoping to hook me up, saying that she was a badass debate team captain. I had to laugh, wondering how much Greg had chugged to use the words badass and debate team captain in the same sentence. Julia's raven black hair framed her face and made her sparkling green eyes pop out like stars on top of a Christmas tree. The debate captain must have caught me staring. She giggled and held up her half-drunk screwdriver. I can't tell if the Lawlet is putting screwdriver in here as a nod to me or just because that's a common drink to find at parties, but either way, I like my screwdrivers. And the phrasing that this person uses to describe Julia, I'm just going to start calling her Julia because I'm a dick and I can. Julia is described believably, and she's not too idealized. It's just she was beautiful and she had sparkling green eyes, and in the simile or metaphor, it's simile because it's like of her eyes being like stars on top of a Christmas tree. That's beautiful phrasing, believable phrasing. It's not too ridiculous. But let's press on. That's about where our conversation started. We found our way to Greg's half-destroyed couch that he picked up off of a curb before winter, and we started talking. We had a lot in common. Amazingly, we both loved the anime JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. When I mentioned how I used to watch Bill Nye as a kid, Julia started drunkenly singing the entire theme song. Hell, we got the entire party shouting, "Bill, Bill, Bill, Bill," at one point. Eventually, Greg got a call from his super, and the party was over. I've been there. I asked what his superintendent said to him, and Greg got nervous smile before saying, "I might have to move into your place after next semester, big bro." The wild partygoers slowly migrated to their cars, their friends and partners crowding into the cold metal boxes on wheels. I was about to head out to my own sedan, feeling more tipsy than drunk, when I felt a warm hand on the shoulder of my coat. I turned to face Julia. She'd sobered up a little after having a few cups of Greg's favorite coffee. "Hey, Derek," she started, her voice sounding a little nervous. "I know this sounds kind of weird, but do you mind taking me home?" When I asked her why, she revealed that my little brother had taken her car keys after she told him she was going for a beer run, after we had just watched her toss almost half a bottle of vodka and screwdrivers in a few minutes before. Being the gentleman and a hopeless romantic that I am, I told Julia I'd drive her back to her place. So I'm going to give the story the benefit of the doubt and say that when they say sobering up via Greg's coffee, they mean like perking up and stopping acting drunk, because there's no way that someone is going to sober up within less than an hour after taking half a bottle of vodka. So this is a little confusing and muddled in the phrasing about cold metal boxes on wheels. I don't know who speaks that way, but thus far we have very believable conversation going on, and this sticks out like a sore thumb, so I would say that I don't really care for that. But overall, I have a good idea of who Julia is and who Derek is, and I like where this is going. It was cold that night, almost below zero, as we sat in the car and waited for it to heat up. Julia was wearing a big, puffy jacket, but I could see her shivering like she was completely naked in the middle of an endless tundra. I pulled out of the parking lot as soon as I felt a blast of warm air come from my car's vents. We pulled onto the main street, and Julia became my navigator as I drove my own personal ship through the white, snow-filled streets. More of the fluffy flakes came down, faster and heavier than it was that morning, and soon the only thing cutting through the darkness was my headlights of my car. Were the headlights of my car. Here the language feels a little bit more surreal, and I feel a little more favorable about that. It makes me think of when you've been out drinking and you've sobered up, but the world is still kind of weird because of how giggly everything's been, and you're sobering up. So that feels more natural than, the metal box on wheels kind of stuff. "Almost there," Julia said. "Just a little." My navigator covered her mouth quickly, and I knew this was a good time to pull off to the side of the road. The raven-haired woman pushed the door open and quickly rushed out onto the snow-covered curb. The sounds of her tossing her cookies makes me realize my own stomach was starting to tie itself in a square knot, and that's when I noticed the girl. The girl's hair was like a dark curtain in front of her face. Her face was pointed down at her small, bare feet in the icy snow. The light from my car's headlights put her in an eerie bright spotlight, and I swear to God the poor thing's skin was blue with frostbite. "Hey," I said softly, taking a few steps towards the poor girl. "What are you doing out here?" Maple Avenue, the street we were on, was a backcountry road. There wasn't a house for the next few miles up until an intersection, and from the looks of this girl's skin, she had been out for the last few hours. She didn't have a coat on, or shoes, or anything other than a long sundress, the kind a mother would give to her daughter to play dress-up in. The girl's voice broke the silence that surrounded me, and it made me shiver in my leather jacket. "Mister?" The young girl's quiet, sweet voice seemed to echo like a gong. Can you take me home, please? I could feel Julia's hand on my shoulder as we both looked at the girl. I knew the right thing to do. This poor girl was just standing there facing us with her eyes pointed straight at her frozen feet. What's your house number, kid? I'll call your mom and tell her we're on our way. I don't know my mommy's number. Please, mister, let me in your car, she said as she took a step forward, her feet dragging in the snow like a ship through the ocean. I can tell you where I live. So I really like this call to action scene where we're having Julia throw up, and that's the thing that introduces us to this little girl. And I can get a very vivid picture in my head of this scene where they're driving through this area. It's a backwoods area. It's very rustic. There's nothing else around. And so, we pull over to the side of the road. Julia starts throwing up, and there's a girl there. And there was no mention of a girl before, so we can kind of get this feeling that this girl materialized out of nothing, or that our narrators wouldn't have even noted, our narrator, singular, and his drunk friend wouldn't have noticed this girl before if it wasn't for this situation where they needed to pull over to the side of the road. By the way, Julia had vodka and orange juice, and when you have a lot of alcohol and a lot of sugar, it doesn't do good things to your body, and you will start throwing up. And if you don't throw up, you'll want to throw up. So, make sure you're not eating on an empty stomach, drinking on an empty stomach, eating on an empty stomach. Fucking Christ, let's press on with this story, shall we? My passenger pulled at my coat sleeve, and I turned to look at the raven-haired woman I was taking home. Derek, I think we should take her to my place first. She looks like she's freezing, and we can call the cops and tell them once we get there. At the mention of the police, the sound of a body falling into the snow hit up like a truck. I rushed towards the girl, hoping she was still conscious, that her heart was still beating. Alright, that paragraph is perplexing. I don't quite understand what they mean by, at the mention of the police, the sound of a body falling into the snow hit up like a truck. Do they mean that she was hit by a truck? Or that it sounded like a truck when she fell to the ground? That is ambiguous. But let's press on and see if we can use context clues, as my third grade teacher told me to do, to figure out what's going on here. Her eyes made me stop in my tracks. The entire eye, including what should have been white, was completely pitch black. Her eyes were so dark that they were like mirrors reflecting my own face, reflecting my face down into the curves of her ears. Reflecting my face down to the curves of my ears. The girl began to scream at the top of her lungs, but it sounded as if she had the voice of a full-grown man. The girl's screech was like a runner's pistol to me, and I rushed back to my car. Julia had started to ask me something, probably what that sound was, but all I did was tell her to get in the car. After that, Julia would call me her hero in public, saying that I saved her from some sort of mugger that tried to trick us into giving him a ride. We both know that was a lie, but we also know that no one would believe us. Even Greg said I must have been drunker than he thought when I told him about a girl with black eyes. The girl with black eyes. Julie and I had been together for a year when I finally decided to pop the question, and we hadn't seen the girl or anything like her since that night. It might have been 4 years after I asked Julia to marry me when our daughter was born. Her name was Alexandra, after Julia's grandmother. She had her mother's black hair, and she looked beautiful as I held her in my arms, like a little cherub from those Renaissance paintings they show you in art class in middle school. I still remember the day I got that call from my wife and that she told me about how our 8-year-old daughter had been killed by a hit-and-run driver. She was wearing the sundress I bought Julia on our honeymoon in Hawaii. When I finally got to the hospital, Julia ran into my arms, with tears pouring down her face. Later on, I asked the doctor where exactly the accident had taken place. He told me it was Maple Avenue. And this story was based on the short story Black-Eyed People by an anonymous author. Well, Lolette 10, or Kyle, or however you like to be referred to, I think that this is a successful story that is in need of editing and certain aspects of its language to be cleared up. It has a beautiful ending, wonderful details. In a very short period of time, we are given these characters, and if we don't care about them in depth, it's kind of hard to get a listener, reader, what have you, to care about characters in the shortest space of time. But to get them invested, which I think is, really what people mean when they say, they want likable characters. They want you to be invested. We get invested in these characters in a very short period of time. I would tone down the romantic language just a little bit, depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I think that you're trying to make this a realistic, weird fiction story, so I would tone down the romantic language just a little bit. I think that the strength of the story at the very end, the twist, if you want to call it that, it's always kind of weird to use the phrase twist for something like this, but that's the best way to describe it. The punch at the end. I would say to make that more impactful, I would give more details about the sundress. We get the idea that the sundress is about, it looks like something that you would use to play dress up with your daughter and everything. But I would give more details about the sundress to get us more invested in that image. I'm already invested in it, but I think more work could be put there to pull us into that moment more. Overall, I really like this story. I think that this is a much better Black-Eyed People story than the ones that we did read. Thank you for submitting this, and thank you for supporting my channel, and being a member of this community. But I think it's time that we wrap this episode up. Evergray06 has hooked us up with a sponsor, and so today's episode was brought to you by Overwatch. Overwatch. Come for the fast-paced action. Also come for the waifus.